Hi, welcome family and friends. I'm Glo and welcome to Glo's Kinder Kitchen. Today I'm going to be making some buttermilk biscuits, and there's many different ways to make buttermilk biscuits, but today I wanted to share a recipe from the Red Rocker Inn in Black Mountain. Their recipe is very similar to how I usually make mine, but the difference is this recipe does not call for sugar. The one that I quite often make has a little bit of sugar in it, and these were delicious, so I thought I'd share this recipe with you. I've had this cookbook now for a little while. One of my brothers, Walter, and his wife Meg gave it to me. They had actually stayed there at the bed and breakfast. It's called the Red Rocker Inn Bed and Breakfast, and this is the recipe. It is very easy, and we're going to go over the ingredients here, and I'll show you how to put it together. So it calls for 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I went ahead and measured it out in here so it wouldn't take as much time up. And then what you do is you add your dry ingredients, and it calls for 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. So that's 1, 2, and that's the quarter. I said half, but I think it's a quarter. Let me read this recipe here. Yeah, it's a quarter, so I'm sorry about that. And then it calls for 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, which I have here. I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And it calls for 3/4 teaspoon of salt. So this is a teaspoon here, and that's pretty much right on. I'll just put the rest of that in. I always do it on the slight side for the salt. And I'm going to go ahead and stir that up here. I'm just going to combine it with the flour. Then the next step is it calls for 1/3 of a cup of vegetable shortening. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. You guys don't have one of these little measuring cup things for solid, and also you can use it for liquids. This comes in really handy. I think you probably saw how it just plunged right in there.
Pop right out.
Yep, so you don't waste much, and it's very easy cleanup. And I'm going to go ahead, and you need to cut in the shortening into the flour. And I'm using what you call a Dutch or Danish whisk. When you look at this contraption, you wouldn't think it would do much, but I'll tell you, it is one of the better buys I've done in a while for kitchen stuff.
Maybe you can blow bubbles with it.
I don't know about that. You might. We can let you try that, Richard.
I don't have any bubble liquid.
I could arrange that. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to cut this shortening into the flour, and I'll be back. This takes about a minute. That's all it takes. And if you don't have one of these, you could use a couple of knives, you could use a pastry blender, you could use a potato masher, forks, whatever you have on hand. So anyway, I'll be back in just about a moment. Well, I got this shortening all cut into this flour here with the baking powder and baking soda, and you can see it's just like small little peas shape in there, and that's what you want. You just want it to blend in, because when we knead this and fold it over, it'll form some really nice layers. So the last ingredient that we're going to be adding in is buttermilk. I didn't have buttermilk on hand tonight, so what I did is I took and put in about 1/8 cup or 2 tablespoons of white vinegar. You can also use lemon juice, works real well as also, into this measuring cup, and then I just filled it up with my whole milk to 3/4 cup. So what I do is I make myself a little well in the bottom of my bowl, and I'm just going to start pouring this in. I'm not going to add all of it at once, because it depends on the day how much humidity you have in the air and stuff as to really how much of that buttermilk you're going to need. Let's see, I definitely need a little bit more. see how easy this is to put together? And in no time at all, you're going to be ready to put your biscuits in the oven. And speaking of oven, I have my oven preheating right now to 450 degrees. And this is going to take all of the buttermilk this time. There we go. So when I make a dough like this, or even cookies, when I'm using my hands and working with dough, I remove my rings before I get started. And that way you don't have the problem of losing a ring in your dough, and it also doesn't mess up your jewelry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my breadboard over here. Just turn it like that. Move it up there for a moment. So see how this is coming together real nicely in this bowl?
Yes.
Okay. It feels so soft. I love the feel of it. There we go. So, now what we're going to do is I'm going to take and just sprinkle a little flour out onto my breadboard. Just like that. And I'm going to put my dough down here. Now with a dough like this for biscuits, you don't want to play with it too much because they say that toughens your biscuits. So I'm going to knead this, and when I say knead, I take the heel of my hand and go in like that. I'm going to turn it. And I'm going to do this about 6 times. So I think I've done it 3 already. What you're doing is you're just kind of mixing everything into that dough ball. And now you're just going to kind of pat it out. And you're going to fold it. Let me just pat it a little bit more. You're just going to fold it in half like that. And you're going to pat it out again. You're going to fold this over 4 to 6 times. By folding this, that's what's going to create some of the layers in your biscuits. This is one of those old-timey things that a lot of moms did and grandmas did for their children and their families years ago. They would make biscuits every day. That was their bread, especially in the South. I think I'll fold one more time. Now I'm just going to pat it out till it's about, half an inch to 3/4 of an inch thick. And what I'm going to do now is try and get it into a rectangle to cut these out. And I try to measure, let's see here, got to get it spread out just a little bit more. I try to get 2 across if I can. It's gonna, there we go. So I'm just going to put a little bit more flour here. Now you can use a cookie cutter like this, or a biscuit cutter. If you use one of these, you got to make sure that your dough is not thicker than your cutter, because otherwise you're not going to cut down all the way through. For myself, through the years, I have found that using a glass works better for me, because then I don't have to worry about the depth of my dough for biscuits. So I just kind of push down and pull up. See how nice that is?
Perfect.
And I greased my pan with my vegetable shortening, the same kind that I used in the biscuits. So again, I'm going to push down and pull straight up.
Perfect.
You don't want to twist. When you twist, it prevents your biscuits, they say, from rising nicely. Push down and pull up. And when you flour your glass, that's going to help your glass from sticking into your biscuit dough. Push down, pull up. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to do this, and then we'll see how many we end up with. But if you put them together or close together in the pan, they say that also will help your biscuits to rise, because it pushes them together and makes them go up instead of out. So I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. Well, here's our biscuits in this pan. Now this recipe makes about 8 biscuits. This little one here was the remainder of the dough, so I just kind of shaped it like the others, but it is smaller. So anyway, I'm going to put these in the oven. The recipe calls for it to cook for 8 to 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes longer for me. Each oven's different, just like your stove. Everybody's stove is different. But I'm going to go ahead and put these in, and I'll see you back when they're done, and then we're going to be brushing them with some melted butter. See you back. Well, look at these beautiful biscuits I just took out of the oven. See how nice they rose? Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it.
Let me turn it a little bit more. There's the little one, the baby, that was with the leftover dough. But these really rose nice. So now what they say to do is, while they're still hot, you're going to spread the melted butter over the top.
They're hot already. I can hear it sizzling.
Yeah. And you don't have to use a cast iron pan if you don't want to. If you have a regular, baking pan that you use, by all means do it. I sometimes cook mine on a stone. In fact, quite often. But I do like my stones. So, but when you press them together, it does, where they're almost touching sides when you start baking, it does help them to rise a little bit more. Because it pushes them up, they can't go out.
Correct. Law of physics.
But don't those look nice? Now I'm going to have to let these cool for just a few minutes before we sample them. And when we sample them, I have made some apple butter today too. Some homemade apple butter. So I'm going to be having a biscuit with the homemade apple butter, and that's going to be a real treat. So anyway, I'll be back in a few minutes. We're going to let these cool, and then we're going to sample it together. Well, look how beautiful this turned out, you guys.
Looks good.
Yeah, you can see the layers. So now I'm going to go ahead and break it open. And I always just use a fork. Just go down around
That's
it.
the easiest
just a
way.
tad. Yep. You see how it just breaks right open? And I'm going to spread this homemade apple butter on it. We'll put a link too at the bottom of this video for this homemade apple butter. Super easy and some of the best I've had, to be honest. Oh yeah. So I'm going to try part of this biscuit without the apple butter first, so I can just see how it tastes and everything. It's a great recipe. I do need to tell you, My biscuits took 12 minutes. Mine rose really nice, but my oven, it took 12 minutes. Oh, this is so good. Now I'm going to try it with the apple butter. Look how beautiful that apple butter is too.
Looks good, Miss Glow. It is good. Both from the Red Rocker Inn.
Oh, that's good. Taste the fall. We're in apple country in this area. But anyway, I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Give me a like, thumbs up if you've enjoyed this. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do. We would really appreciate it. Give me, excuse me there. Give me a comment. And thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.